the UK, the Conservative lead over Labour has narrowed ahead of the general election on December the 12th. According to the latest polls, Labour made a 3% gain, jumping from 26 to 29%, while the Tories made marginal gains with a 1% rise to 35%. In other news, British opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said on Tuesday that a large-scale cyber attack on his party's digital platforms made him nervous about the rest of the campaign. A day earlier, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson welcomed the Brexit Party's decision not to contest Conservative seats in the coming general election, but denied there had been a deal. Joining me in the studio for more on British politics is Kate Osamor, a British politician who has served as a Member of Parliament for Edmonton since 2015 and is the party's parliamentary candidate for the seat in this election. Kate is also the all-party parliamentary chair on Nigeria. It's the second week into a really, I would say, quite bitter campaign. How's it going? I see you on social media, out and about, you're everywhere at the moment.
Yes, second week. Bitter. I think the weather is bitter. I think it's actually freezing cold.
It's freezing.
But, you know, we're in a winter election. It's never happened before, not in my lifetime anyway. And for me, I really just want people to understand that there is a stark choice. The stark choice is, do we continue as we are in this, you know, conundrum where we're going round and round in politics? Parliament, for me, I got elected in 2015. 2017, a general election. 2019, a general election. Wow. You see where I'm coming from? Yeah. I don't know anything other than all of this chaos. We need to change things. And I'm saying that as a parliamentarian. When I go out knocking on doors, speaking to people, they're telling me, Kate, what's happening? How can we change things? We're at a deadlock. We need to move things. So this election is an election, I think they're calling it
Brexit election.
Yeah, Brexit election, yes. It's an election where we can change things. We need to, and you know, of course I'm going to say this, I'm representing the Labour Party. We need to change the arithmetics. We need to get rid of Boris.
What is it about Labour? Because I've had a lot of Labour supporters sit where you're sitting, Kate, but there's a distaste at the moment. There's something about the party that doesn't seem to be resonating. Why is that?
Well, you've made some really important points. And one thing I need to get across here, and I'm sorry I have to say this, and this is not about you, but I feel that some journalists act like press officers for the Conservative Party. They seem to allow them to get away with things that no other party, no other politician could get away with. And, you know, going back to Boris Johnson, I mean, yes, you're right. He's able to get away with anything. During his election to become the Prime Minister, to become the leader of his party, he was caught up in some domestic with his partner. I don't know, I wasn't there.
The police were called.
The police were called. That was established. Yeah. And then what we heard after that was that the neighbours were nosy, they were Remainers, they had no business calling the police. What is this? What society do we live in? That my neighbour can be calling out for help and I can't call the police without being hounded out of my own home. The story that we get is always skewed because it is being purported by, I'm sorry, by journalists who are acting like press officers, who are trying to turn the story into, don't really look at it, let's look at Labour Party. And, you know, I'm not satisfied with the way that some journalists have been behaving, but what I do know is that they have a job to do and they should be able to do it with, you know, nobody judging them. But unfortunately, if somebody is being reported in such a way which their wrongs or their ills are not really being gaslighted, then something isn't right.
Then something. I've got to ask you about, you know, I've got to talk about the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn. I know you're a staunch supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, and we've seen it's fantastic when you watch PMQs on a Wednesday and you see just so many black faces on the front benches. I know you're on the front bench as well. That's great, but then on the other hand, the anti-Semitism, the reports about it being too much of an extremist party. How do you defend that? Because there are some people that don't like Boris Johnson but still can't see themselves voting for Jeremy Corbyn because they see him as an extremist.
Well, first and foremost, I support and I have supported all Labour leaders. Yeah. And that's my job as a member of the party, as an activist, and now obviously as a Member of Parliament. But for us to look at the party, we need to look at it in its entirety. And yes, you're right, it is good to see black people on the front bench, but they have got there for their merits. Yes, they're not there as tokens. And unfortunately, it sometimes is purported like, oh, look, there's some black people at the front. Oh, it's, you know, the party looks good. No. We have members who look like that. So the members should be able to see themselves and think, actually, I'm a member in my CLP, and now I know if I want to become an MP, I can. And under Jeremy, he has highlighted that. He's shown that there is a journey that you can take from your small little party, wherever that may be in the country, to getting into Parliament. But going on talking about anti-Semitism, you know,
it's dog in the party, Kate.
We have to call it out where we see it, and we must deal with it. We cannot have no member of any community feeling uncomfortable in the party. And I stand with anyone who says, Kate, there's an issue, or this has happened to me, or I've witnessed it. I have never witnessed it myself, but I do not discredit anybody that says that is what.
Especially because you're in North London.
Of course I am.
A massive Jewish community there. I've listened to some Jews, and they're scared about Jeremy getting in because they're scared what would happen to
I grew up in Tottenham and Stamford Hill. If anyone knows Stamford Hill, they are my neighbours.
Yes.
And I can assure you, you know, that's who I grew up with, you know. Yeah. But no one's talking about me. I understand you're talking about Jeremy. Yeah. Look, under whoever the leader is, if there is an issue within your party, within your organisation, then you are going to be the person that they call upon to sort it out. Yeah. If you're the CEO of an organisation and there are people who are not being paid the right amount of money, whether people are not being treated fairly in the office, if there's any kind of, you know, anything untoward, and we all know, we're all working hard to make this world better, we need to look at the leadership, and the leadership has to take a stance and say, I don't stand for this, which he has done, but that clearly is not enough. And I think we do need to go back to how can we change things? How can we change the face of the party so people feel comfortable and people feel safe? And that is my job. I have to do that. I'm a member of Parliament.
We're running out of time in this part, but I can't move on without asking you about Brexit, which is the buzzword. It's been the buzzword for the past 3.5 years.
Tell me about it.
What is the Labour policy stance on this? We still don't get it. Do you want Brexit? Do you not want Brexit? Is there going to be a second referendum? We're just sick to the teeth of this. Even in Nigeria, they're sick of it.
Oh, Nigeria, please stay with me. Please stay with us. Look, I have been there for those years, as you've just said. You've got to remember, we've all got to remember, even in our own household, there is a split.
Yes.
OK? Husband and wife could have voted different. Brother and sister could have voted different. Yeah. And that represents the party. The party mirrors society. Yeah. So we needed our leader to show everybody that we have to respect the outcome, but we also need to have another referendum. And why I say that, the only way you can undo something is by doing it again. You can't have a general election and ignore the outcome of the referendum, because that's disrespecting the people, even if you did not vote to leave. If they won fair and square. Yeah. But we have to then turn around and say, look at the relationship that we already have with the European Union. Do we actually want to leave that? And if we do, we need to reform it. And for us to be able to reform it, we need to offer the people a choice. And that is what we are offering.
That second referendum, Kate, is high stakes, because there will be people that are definitely down for it. We've seen the marching, you know, we've seen the voices.
Yeah, in central London, yeah.
But there are so many people that will be like, absolutely not. That puts British democracy in the bin, because 17.4 million people voted. Let them go. Go. Yeah. Go, leave, and then in 10 years' time or whatever, we can have another referendum. Why so soon?
I agree with you. So then why be scared? Let's do it again. That's what I say. Bring it on. But we have to explain fully the relationship that we have. We have to explain why we need to reform it. But more importantly, we cannot turn into an island on our own. It's not possible. We can't function like that. Yeah. And I think that is the conversation we should have been having, and we should be having constantly. Instead, what we're doing is we're fighting each other. And we also need to think about the young people who did not vote, who maybe now can vote, who will say, excuse me, this is my future. Yeah. And I need to say something.
I want a stake in this.
That's right.
Let's change gears slightly and talk about Nigeria. You're obviously a Nigerian, British-born, but Nigerian lady. And can you talk to me about your time as chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Nigeria?
Well, as chair of the all-party group, we have been very clear as to what we're trying to achieve. And one of the things is to look at the issues that the diaspora are having, whether it is in Nigeria, coming back and forth, whether we look at the access to justice, which was a big thing which has come up, and that's in the UK and in Nigeria. And we've also looked at trade, and we've tried to bring in speakers and bring in people who can, you know, open up those conversations. Yeah. My secretariat is Chatham House, and for those people that don't know, Chatham House is a think tank that really supports, you know, whether it's, you know, African speakers or people in Latin America.
They give us a good platform,
They do, and they're supporting us. So this is really, really helpful, and it actually shows how important we are to them as a think tank. But just not... about a year ago, I went to Nigeria and
Where did you go?
Well, we went to Edo State, we went to Abuja, we went to Lagos, and we were doing what can I say? It was like a research into modern-day slavery. And I say research because it is established that there is an issue in Edo State and where there is young men and women who have been lied to. They've been lied to. There is a history of people looking after each other in the whole of Africa, much less in Nigeria, where one of us does very well, we help our brothers or our sisters and say, you know what, bring over the younger one and they will stay in my house, I'll send them to school. But now that same custom is being infiltrated by traffickers who are lying to families and saying, you know something, I can take your child to the UK or to Europe and they will have a better life. Unfortunately, a lot of them are ending up in Libya, dying in the Mediterranean Sea. It's horrific what's going on.
With Brexit, we know that the UK are really trying to renew, their relationship with Nigeria. Just last week, I was at an event where we have the Minister of Investment and Trade of Nigeria here. The Lord Mayor was hosting a Nigerian investment showcase as a prelude to January's inaugural UK-Africa Summit, which is great and it's fantastic. Do you worry sometimes that with all of these investment summits, I know you must have been invited to a dozen of them, that sometimes there is a scramble for Africa and, there's lots of promises, but sometimes it doesn't trickle down, does it?
Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing is the UK are now trying to look elsewhere because they want to have new relationships. But they do need to establish and recognise that the relationship they have with Nigeria has not always been a good one. And why I say not a good one, we need to look at the colonial past. We need to recognise that, they shouldn't just be looking at Nigeria or Africa, full stop, to say, oh, yeah, you look good now, we're interested in you. They should actually be saying, there are entrepreneurs already there. There are already business links already there. How can we learn from you? Not the other way around. So because the relationship is not equal. And because it's not equal, I'm concerned when I hear that they're suddenly looking at Africa. But what does that mean? How will it look? We have millions of young people who don't have jobs, don't have access to good education anymore. And I say anymore because, it was second to none in the 70s and the 80s when it came to education in Nigeria. But I'm concerned when we are just talking about business all the time. We need to be talking about investment in infrastructure, roads, water, electricity. Come on, if you haven't got a generator, it's ridiculous.
Let's talk about the diaspora a little bit, because we are doing well, of course, people like you, leading, waving the flag there. But do you think we're leveraging on our importance, as we've seen in the South Asian community? So the Pakistanis, the Indians, who are doing so well. Are we there yet? What is it about the Nigerian community where we're constantly talking about opportunity, but are not actually doing it?
Well, I think one thing we have to do, and I agree with you, is to recognise where we have the opening, where we have the brilliance, where we have the platform. But once we recognise it, we need to say to each other, how can we help you? How can we support you? Let's not bring each other down. Let's not be critical. Let's understand sometimes the industry someone's in. So somebody might look at yourself or myself and think, oh, politics, the media. But if you don't understand it, I won't know how to protect you. I won't know how to celebrate you, possibly. But equally, I might know how to do that because I'm doing a similar job to you. So I think we need to have much more bigger caucuses. And America's good at that. Having caucuses, having conventions, where we sit together and we all do the same thing and we support each other. Whether that is putting out documents, whether that's doing how to do, what not to do, learn from my experiences. And we're not good at that. We're not open enough. And I know that makes us vulnerable sometimes, but I think it will encourage those young girls and those young boys who are thinking, I want to get into politics. Oh, I get into politics and that could happen to me. Or I want to be on TV. Oh, that could happen to me. How do I get there? How do I stay there? And more importantly, am I welcome?
Got to talk about knife crime, Kate.
Yes,
because
of course.
It's, I've spoken to to some victims, you know, some parents. Some of them say it's constantly happening, that the media are, you know, just really blasting it when it's always been there. Some say it's worse than it's ever been. What is your view on it? Especially because now, you know, a lot of Nigerian boys are, if they're not the victims, they're the perpetrators. Talk to me.
There's so many issues. It's very complex. I think we do need to recognise the victims. We need to recognise the perpetrators, but we need to find out what the common denominator is. And a lot of the time, it's you know, not being at school, being excluded from school.
Latchkey parents?
Not even latchkey parents. It's having nowhere to go. So if you're on your way home and you're focused and you get home, it's fine. You shut the door and you don't, because a lot of us grew up like that. But there are some kids who are excluded from school. They end up in these pupil referral units, and within the units, it is a grooming gang that will be controlling it, not the teachers. So some of these referral units are no good for our children. Not all of them, but some of them are no good.
Yes.
So you get excluded from school, you end up in this pupil referral unit, you have a gang member that's possibly circling it. And this has been documented. I'm not saying this because I'm being against the pupil referral units. What I'm saying is that we need to do better. We need to recognise that a lot of our kids need support from home. Some families cannot support their children. Some families... Financially, emotionally, just physically, being there. They're working 3 or 4 jobs. And that means that some kids will end up falling foul to be a member of a gang. And let's remember, a gang can give you purpose as well. But is that a good thing? No, it should be a family. So we need to look at the family unit, and is it broken down? And if it is, then who is helping them? Do you think the Nigerian community are honest about that, though? Because I can remember when I was growing up, you know, and I don't want to offend anybody, but it's true. A lot of Nigerian African parents used to blame the Caribbeans, didn't they? They'd think it was, if you had a Jamaican friend, they'd be like, oh, that's a troublemaker. That's not the case, but they're still brushing it under the carpet. I think we're very good at looking at the perfection of where we want our children to be. We want them to be doctors, nurses, you know, high status. We don't understand, not all of our kids will ever be that. And also, we don't really understand the journey they're taking from when they leave the house. It's not easy for some of them. And if you live on an estate, or you live in an area where there are other kids who are pulling you away, and you have a parent that just wants you to be perfect, and you know you're never going to be that perfect person, you'll end up falling foul and lying. And unfortunately, a lot of our kids don't tell us what they're doing. So there's no point sitting there saying, I want my child to be a doctor, and you're not looking at their grades. You know, it's not going to happen. But then you need to say, what can I do to help my child? And unfortunately, when you're too strict and you have a dream for them and you're not really looking at who are they going to be? Are they going to be the teacher? Are they going to be someone that sweeps the streets? Are they going to be the scientist? Let's work this out together. Let's work this out. Kate, we've got to wrap up now, but we've got 4 weeks to go. 4 weeks exactly until, you know, it's election day. Election day, A lot of our viewers are in the UK. I'm sure they'll be keen to see you. Can you tell us about a couple of events or things that you've got coming up over the next couple of weeks? Thank you. Well, I mean, the next couple of weeks, I am generally going to be in the constituency. No Christmas shopping. Well, I mean, just after. Just after. So a lot of my campaigning will be within the constituency. Just remind us. So Edmonton is a constituency that will be outside the school gates. I will be knocking on people's doors. I will, more importantly, I will just be telling people to vote, register to vote. The cut-off date is the 26th of November. Wow. So make sure that you register to vote by then. It's very easy. Just go on an app. You don't need to worry about documentation. You just need to say, this is where I live, and then the rest will be dealt for you, dealt up for you. But look, it's an election of our lifetime. Register to vote. Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.